the Angel Conference Series, and so there'll be another one in October for the third apparition of the angel. And each apparition had a very specific message for the children, which was forming them and preparing them to receive the apparitions of Our Lady, which begin in May of the next year. So the second part of the conference series will be on Our Lady. And so next year, beginning in May, there'll be a conference each month.
So beginning with January 2017?
May, because that would be the 100th anniversary of the first apparition, and then June's the 100th anniversary of the second apparition, and so on until October.
May. So you guys are going to have a conference every month?
Every Saturday closest to the anniversary date. So the anniversary is always on the 13th. And so most of them are happening during the week. So we're choosing the Saturday just before or just after. And so each conference will focus on that particular message from Our Lady on that apparition, because each one, again, very different focus on each one, what Our Lady is expressing to the children.
Where will these conferences be?
They're all going to be here.
All right, all conferences here?
Yes.
So in addition to talking about what the particular messages were from Our Lady to the children, what else will you guys be discussing?
Well, the overall, it's important. This comes from literally years of prayer about this and wanting to feeling like Our Lady desires this message to be repeated in a way that it hasn't up to this point, meaning that St. John Paul II, 2 years before he became Pope, on a visit to the United States, spoke about the great challenge of our time, about the church against the anti-church, the gospel against the anti-gospel, and that now was the time where this great battle was going to happen. And then when he was shot in May 13th of 1981, he studied the message very closely. And he said at that time that the message is more important now than in 1917. Pope Benedict, when on his visit to Fatima, the last one before he resigned the office, said that the message of Fatima, the lessons of Fatima, were still unfolding right before our very eyes. And so this 100th anniversary celebration is to remind people and to prepare them for the graces that we believe are there in celebrating and honoring Our Lady during this anniversary. And the message of the central message of Fatima is that in order to have peace, we must pray for the salvation of souls, primarily our own. And what does that prayer entail? But making reparation, especially in our time, for those who blaspheme against God. And that made a lot of sense in 1917, when the world was very different. Today, people don't even realize they're blaspheming God. People are uncatechized. They're not formed properly. And so part of the message is how much is needed from those of us who do have some formation and recognize that the world continues to blaspheme against God. And that's why there's no peace. Wars, famine, these things we know from Our Lady telling us at Fatima are caused by our own sin. And so the only way to bring about peace in the world is to stop sinning. And as she said so many times at Fatima, many, many, many souls go to hell because there's no one to pray for them. And that's another part of the message, is the need for people to pray for all those who have no one to pray for them. They don't realize what they're doing. It's not always a matter of approaching someone and, sort of accusing them because they really don't know what they're doing. And so part of what we're teaching through these conferences is the need simply to pray and to be compassionate as Our Lady was at the cross, knowing what was being done to her Son, and to compassionate as she teaches us with the passion and death of our Lord, and those merits, and asking for those merits to be applied to all those today who have no idea what they're doing. That's the essential point of these conferences.
Why do you feel they're so necessary? Like, what led you to call, like, I need to do this?
It's really, coming from as a Marian and being formed as a Marian, I have a great love and honor, reverence for Our Lady. And so in my own prayer and recognizing that something should be said, we can't let this 100th anniversary pass without doing something for her honor. And to remember, one of the catechetical points that I continue to talk about is that, as our Lord reminded us, and through the Holy Gospel, that we can't do anything. There's really nothing that we can offer that is worthy of Him or worthy of Our Lady. But through our desire to have a pure intention in our prayers, we can offer them to Our Lady. And because she is perfect, simply by her receiving them, she perfects our own prayer. And then she offers them to her Son in perfection. But the difference is that she offers them on behalf of me, on behalf of you, in perfection. And that's something we can't do. And I felt that that's something people need to know. They need to remember and to be reminded to entrust themselves, all their prayers, their merits, their sacrifices, their suffering, that there is meaning. There is meaning to their suffering, the daily suffering, the sickness, rejection, loneliness, sadness, all these things, that God is not desiring us to suffer. He wants us to recognize that there is meaning in our suffering. And through that suffering, we can make reparation, not just for our own sins, but for the sins of the whole world. And I believe it's inspired by Our Lady, especially by Our Lady of Fatima.